Dave.
I hear you.
We got a lot. Dave said, I hear you. We hear you. Everyone hears you now, Dave. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 57. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late. A little technology problem. All right.
Yeah, but
You just sat there like you weren't even fazed by it.
I just stare at my phone trying to figure out what did I do wrong.
That's exciting. Well, we're joined tonight by specialists, former specialists. I mean, are you always a specialist? You're always a specialist, right? You're always the last rank you achieve.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you maintain that.
Yeah, definitely the oldest specialist we've had.
Oh, thanks.
All right, and a lot of firsts tonight, which I'm excited about. Oldest specialist. You turn 75 next month, you said?
Next Tuesday.
Oh, wow. Next week. That's even more exciting. So,
yeah.
So you're the second oldest guest we've had then.
Oh, okay.
My dad was a little bit older. So our second Vietnam veteran, if we haven't talked about, which is a huge thing that we're hoping to talk about tonight. And the most important thing I want to talk about, if you're okay with, is our first draftee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's like, oh, yes. Oh, no. We'll start off with a quote about that. And this is from Dylan McDermott, who's an actor. He said, "I was terrified of the Vietnam War when I was 13. I thought I was going. The draft was such an ominous thing. I felt as if I was going to trickle down to me." So let's like, I mean, do we want to go into your early life first, or do we want to go right into that moment? We'll wait on that. How about that?
Well, you know, I did get drafted, but I mean, there's a little bit of story that leads up to that.
Right.
I was in high school. I was dating this girl. I just loved her, and I was a junior and senior. I dated this same girl, and I went to college. Then after I graduated, I was in '67, and I really wasn't into college, but I went because my parents thought it was the thing to do. You know, it really wasn't me. But and all that time I was in college, I was maintaining that relationship with her. And then after my freshman year, would have been in 1968. I think I was probably 18 or 19 then. And you know, by the time you're 18 or 19, you always know everything and you can always make the wisest decisions of your life.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
and so
except for if you have kids,
So I got the brilliant idea that maybe I'll drop out of college and marry this girl, which I did. And, you know, that was in the August of 68. Yeah. And everything was fine. We lived in a little apartment. Everything was great. And then, probably 6 months later, I got this letter. and the letter said, I think it said, "Your friends and neighbors have selected you." And I'm thinking, well, they might be my neighbors, but they're not my friends because Vietnam's going on, and it's kind of bad. But I got drafted and sent to basic training.
So that moment when you get the letter, like, I mean, so let's go back to that time, because I think there's not many people that, you know, and I know my dad, I've talked to him a little bit about, but it's a different case. He didn't get drafted.
Yeah.
He kind of jumped the gun up. But what is that feeling like, knowing that the letter can come at any moment? Are you not giving a shit, or you just wait until it happens, or, you know, like, what's going on with that?
I think I blindly ignored the fact that it could happen. And I was just kind of hoping, well, I'd been because when you're in college, you're exempt. You couldn't get drafted. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they forgot about me dropping out of the college, you know. Like I said, you know, I'm 19, so I know everything in the world. It was a shocker when you get that letter.
Yeah.
And I think I made a snowball out of it and threw it in the trash can. I wish I'd saved it I'd love to show it to you now. But it was a shock. And you know, I'm a young guy. I'm married. You know, and you know, I'm thinking, you know, this is probably going to change. It did change my whole life, of course, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Like, how'd the family take it? How'd the wife take it at the time?
You know, obviously I think she was, it scared her, but I don't remember. I don't I think maybe I was just too much of a shock to really remember how she reacted, and I think my parents were devastated, um, because I made the brilliant decision to drop out of college. All I had to do was stay there, and I would have been exempt, and just poor choices. But nobody makes poor choices when they're 19, right?
No one. No one that I know. Yeah. I mean, everyone that I know makes horrible decisions. I mean, yeah, it doesn't stop at 19 necessarily, but, so, I mean, was there a part of you when that happened where you like, fuck, I should have stayed in school, or did you just
Of
like,
course.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but I don't think I was. I don't think I was really devastated by it at that point, but I was really afraid of Vietnam. I mean, because it was on the news every night. It was in the newspapers. It was everywhere, and Americans were dying every single day. And if you look back, one of the worst situations in Vietnam was Tet of '68, and I don't know how many thousands died that day, but and this was '68, so I was scared. I was really scared. Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you, man. That's a tough.
It's just, yeah, it's as you go through life, you go down different roads, and this was, I could have stayed on a nice, safe road by staying in college, and I decided not to, but in some ways, I think I felt better for my military experience. But I still have a lot of, there's a lot of things happen that I regret, or don't regret, but I don't know if I really have nightmares, but there's things that I, just bad experiences that I was exposed to.
Yeah. So that was 19 years old. Let's rewind a little bit.
Okay.
So any siblings?
I have a sister 7 years older than me. We grew up in Mansfield, so everybody knew everybody, or at least on that side of town or where we lived. And my dad worked for Standard Oil, which is BP now. Mom was a substitute teacher. They were both really, really smart, and I think they thought that I should be smart because they were smart, and that kind of led to. That kind of led to the, you should go to college type thing. And,
the math and that up, right?
Yeah. And, back then when you were in Ohio, when you were 18, you could drink beer. And I'm thinking now I'm 18 and geez, this drinking beer and partying was a lot more fun than studying. Which has maybe helped me make my bad decision to drop out of college.
Yeah, because you said in your bio that you didn't go to class much. All you did was go to parties and drink beer. So
yeah, I got involved in a fraternity, and there's probably more beer drinking than anything else. And
what was your major? What were you trying to major in? What was your plan?
I don't think I really had one. I mean, I didn't have a direction for sure. At that time, Marietta College. Since you already pointed out how old I am.
I got it. When people older than me, I'm getting old. I'm like,
At that time, Marietta College, that's where I went, Marietta, down in Marietta, Ohio. They were one of 4 schools in the country you get a petroleum engineering degree. And, I didn't know about that until, halfway through my freshman year. And I thought, well, maybe that's a direction I'd like to go to, because they made the astounding promise that if you get that degree, there's countries in the Middle East. And of course, the Middle East back then was all sand, but there's oil companies in the Middle East that will pay you $25,000 a year to come here. I'm thinking, yeah, that's me.
Exactly, that's me. Yeah, that's fine. So now on this thing, you're the first person that's been drafted. So a lot of people have been on. They're influenced by joining the military by other people. Anybody in your family before you in the military?
I don't think so. None of my grandparents. Yeah, I was the first person in the military in our family.
So the Vietnam War made you special. It was like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's crazy. I've been, you know, ever since you sent me the bio and I read that, it's one of the things that's been like that feeling. I think a whole generation has forgot about that and how that if you were at that age at the time, that what could happen to you in a blink of the snap of a finger. It's so crazy. And
Yeah, if you were, in my case, I wasn't in college and I was fairly healthy. You were really vulnerable, and they were drafting people, drafting a lot of people. You know?
Yeah, because like today, you could be the same way. You can be a fairly healthy 19-year-old who's not going to class, drinking too much beer, and going to parties, and there's really no consequence. So you may go home, get yelled at, but like, you know, you can find another place. But there was definitely a time that when, you know, if it didn't work out, there was a huge consequence. Like, you know, just like a big ape waiting on the corner to get you that you didn't know it was going to come. It's so crazy. I mean, I can't imagine that feeling of going to the mailbox, you know, and every day and wondering like, is today my day? And,
Yeah, it's kind of, and you know, you get that envelope, and it says from the.
Did it really say that? Does it really say from your friends and family?
Oh yes, it does. Or yes, it did.
I never knew that.
Yeah, your friend. I think it said your friends and neighbors have selected you. And I don't think if I got much further than that before I made a snowball out and threw it in the trash can. But
which one of you? No.
well, you know, we live in an apartment. I didn't like any of those neighbors, so they might have been some of those that.
Well, I've seen. I mean, just recently I've seen a video of that where they were actually drawing the numbers. I mean, an old video of that. I mean, it's broadcast on TV. That's so.
Well, that was later.
Yeah.
I was in Vietnam when the year that they drew numbers, and my birthday came up. I think it would have been 340. So, if I had stayed in school one more year, and then dropped out, and my birthday to come up, I would have never been selected. But when I was the year that I got picked, and before they did the numbers selection, they were just, if you were eligible, we're sending you a letter, and we want you. You know. Of course, I had no idea when I went in, you know, what am I going to do? I mean, I didn't know anything at all. I didn't know anything about the military. I didn't have a family. I had a couple of friends or older brothers of people I knew that were in, but I don't think I knew anybody had gone to Vietnam. Huh. Yeah. It's kind of scary though.
First time again. Look at that, how special you are. That's the second time you've been special, right?
Oh, I know. I
You
should
sound like a special guy.
I should have been playing the lottery. You know, I'm so lucky. Yeah.
That is crazy. I can't imagine. Like I said, I'm sorry that happened to you, but you made it through, like you said before. You got no holes in you. You got all your limbs, which is good. We're gonna get to that part, but
Okay.
You have an interesting story. So you get drafted, you show up to join the military, and you actually get the option. They ask you what you want to do.
Yeah, well, you know, when you're drafted, you know, when people enlist now, they know what they want to do, what direction they want to go. But when you're drafted, you don't have any idea. And, you know, you go to basic training and everybody gets in a line, and, you know, you go in this door and they hand you some boots, and you just keep following the line, go through, and, you know, they hand you your shirts, and, you know, just it says. And I remember being in line and going into this room, and the guy yells next, and I sit down, and he says, "Stewart, what do you want to do in the military? Or what do you want to do in the Army?" I think that's what he said. Maybe in the military. And I'm thinking,
Like nothing. I don't want to do anything. I've been drafted, goddammit.
I really want to leave. But I thought, what can I tell this guy that would keep me out of Vietnam? And you know, I can't really think on it for a long time because the whole line of people behind me are going to be nice. And I think, well, they don't need cops in Vietnam. Cops are like for cities. So I said, I want to be an MP. And I remember this guy kind of looked at me and he kind of chuckled, because back then, you know, MPs were all, you know, they were just big guys, like tight end types that broke up fights. And he looked over at me, all 5'9", $130, and he just kind of snickered. But he wrote something down, and and then he asked me something. Was there anything else? And I can't remember what I said, but they sent me to MP school, and so I did my basic at Fort Jackson, and then I went to Fort Gordon for AIT, and promptly got that letter saying you're going to Vietnam. Like, oh goody, you know.
So at that time, if you can remember, like going to your basic and AMP, can you remember like what the split was with draftees or like people that enlisted? Was it mainly draftees? How did that look?
As I recall, I think most of the people were draftees. Uh, um, you know, I just don't think back then as much. You know, the military didn't pay it all, and of course Vietnam has been going on for a couple of years, and you know, I don't think there was many people volunteering to go in. Now I think perhaps more people were volunteering to go into like to get in the Coast Guard or into the Air Force, or if they really wanted to have a specific job, you know, they might have. But I think most of the people I was involved with were just all draftees.
I'm trying to give my dad a hard time because my dad didn't wait to get drafted. He enlisted. So he's the guys that was like, what are they doing? He
he,
I mean,
he had
he's even laughing. He's like, oh, what? No, no, but it was a crazy time because, like you said, not many people were saying, hey, I want to go off and get a chance to go to Vietnam. And it seems like just a crazy,
beautiful,
like damned if you do and damned if you don't, right?
Beautiful, scenic Southeast Asia. Yeah.
So when you said you were going to be an MP or want to be an MP,
yeah,
like in your heart, you believe they don't need me in Vietnam. I'm going to go to like somewhere stateside.
Yes. Yeah. Somewhere where they have to have like cops, you know. Well, you know, it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I didn't really think about it. I didn't want to say I wanted to be an infantryman or fire big guns or something, you know, because I figured, you know, that would do it for sure.
But he was waiting to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was that like getting that letter saying you're going to Vietnam? I mean, now you're committed to it.
Yeah, no, I think I was fairly sure it was coming. But then again, when you go through MP school, they really stress, you know, neatness and sharpness, and I mean everything. All your brass has to be shiny. Your shoes have to be immaculate. And of course, I know that's common in all branches of the military. But I think I felt the stress of that, and so I figured, well, of course, I'm married now, and you know, I'm not really looking forward to being away for a year, because back then you had to go for 1 year. That was it. So, I mean, I was obviously scared, but I think I probably knew it was coming. It didn't shock me when they gave me those orders. Yeah, I think I knew it was coming. So I think I had like 3-week leave or something before I had to go. And I really, yeah, I really had never done any flying. I mean, people didn't fly too much back then, especially people with my money. But you know, I sure got to fly when you go to Vietnam. You know, that's a big time flight.
Get all Nighter first, man.
Yeah, but the whole plane was, you know, you just sat like, the plane was 6 seats wide, and everybody was like this. And back then, you could smoke in an airplane, so whether you smoked or not, everybody smoked. You know. I remember the plane landing. When we flew there, we flew over the world. We stopped in Anchorage and then Tokyo and then Vietnam. And I was seated probably 3/4 the way back on the plane. And when we landed in Benoit, which was in southern part of Vietnam. And I think your dad said he was at Benoit. But I remember they opened the front hatch and the guy steps in and said, everybody sit there, don't do anything. And then you could hear this groan coming, just a steady groan from the front of the plane back. It was like a wave of heat that hit you. And you didn't realize how hot Vietnam was until that wave hit you. And of course, it stayed with you for a year. It was hot.
So your number keeps coming up. You think, hey, now I'm going to Vietnam. Maybe they'll put me in like Saigon, where I'm busting up people on R&R. Lucky Dave doesn't get that right.
Oh gosh, no. No. Um, I left there and was sent to Long Binh, which is a huge military base in Vietnam, and relatively safe. I mean, it had been attacked during Tet of '68, but I don't think they ever got very far into Long Binh. But it's huge. I think it was 50,000 GIs there. And so I was sitting at this compound waiting for somebody to tell me what to do. They dropped me off. They jeeped me over here, and they said, "Oh, you're going to B Company." And so I was just standing outside this compound. I dropped my paperwork off, and I'm standing there. My uniform is starchy. My everything is shiny. My shoes are polished great. And here comes this truck. I think they call them a deuce and a quarter, a deuce and a half. I don't know. An open bed truck with about a dozen people in it, guys. And I look at them and I do like a triple take. I mean, because they've got, they all got kind of beards growing. They're covered in mud. They got, one guy's carrying an M60 machine gun, another one's carrying a grenade launcher. They've all got bandoliers of M60 ammo. They look like something out of a Mexican warrior or something. And I covered in mud, and I'm thinking, oh, these guys, what's happened to Dave now? Well, it's not real funny. Well, it's funny now.
I mean, no, it's. Listen, I'm about to smack you. I mean, it's just. I mean, you had a rough go around for a couple of years there. I mean,
it just unfortunate. Yeah. The unit I got assigned to, they were all MPs, but they didn't do any MP work. We left the compound of Long Binh, and we had an area that we worked in that was outside of Long Binh, and we set up ambushes because in Vietnam it was a curfew at dark. You couldn't be out moving around. If you were, you were considered Viet Cong. And so we would set up an ambush, and we would stay out for 6 days. And that's where they got the mud and all that stuff. So after I saw this truck come in, when you came into Long Binh, you were in for 3 days. And so 3 days later, I'm with these guys. And now I'm out in the jungle, and somebody told me to sit down here. And I was a new guy, so they kind of protected me. But that first night, I mean, as we're talking right now, I can remember that night. I was so scared. I mean, I could hear ants walking. And when you're in the jungle, it's noisy. I mean, there's bugs and things out there. And lizards making noise. And I remember that particular night. The Viet Cong used to fire rockets at Long Binh, but they couldn't aim very good. They kind of set them up and lean them on a tree but when they fired these rockets, they kind of explode when they take off. And I remember that very first night, probably 200 meters, maybe 300 meters away, one of these rockets got fired, and it was a huge explosion. And I just remember, oh, this is it. Day one, I ain't going to make it. I thought we were under attack. Well, they didn't really care about us. I mean, so I'd heard that a lot of times the Viet Cong knew where our ambush was, so they would walk around us or avoid us. But we would go out for 6 days. We'd set up an ambush, and then the next day we'd pull back, go into a village or safe area, and then that night we'd go to a different area. So I did that for 6 months. Then I got a job in a radio area. We had a radio compound that kept track. We had, our particular unit had Boston Whalers, and they had riverboats and 3 companies of ambush guys. So I did that radio thing, which it was really a good, safe job for me then. I mean, I was, but I think I worked 3 months without a day off, but they didn't care about that in Vietnam. And then went on R&R, met my wife in Hawaii. We're still married then. And spent a week there, and then came back and went to Da Nang. And then I was actually an MP in Da Nang. We rode around in Jeeps like MPs and tried to look for AWOLs and uh, anything. I don't, I really don't know what we're doing because I didn't really care because I knew I was getting short. I just didn't want to get killed. I did have, I remember I had one experience. I was probably I had a month to go or somewhere around there. And I was in bed. And this compound I was in, if you could imagine, like somebody taking a box of donuts and just laying around, we were kind of like one of those donuts around Da Nang Air Base, where the Air Force was. We were one of those. And the idea was if they, and beyond us was Viet Cong, or NVA. We didn't have control of that land out there. So the idea with these donuts, if somebody tried to come at the air base, they'd run into one of these compounds and at least be alert to it.
A speed bump.
Speed bump. Yeah, we were a speed bump. Yeah. And the next compound over, which was maybe 500 meters away, they got a pallet of charging rounds for rockets. And they had a bunker to put them in, but they didn't put them in. And maybe by this time, the Viet Cong are getting better with aim. And we used to have a problem on compounds. You'd see a lot of Vietnamese worked on the military bases. They did cooking, cleaning, sweeping floors, laundry stuff, okay? And you'd see them every now and then pacing things off. And they must have paced this pallet of charging rounds, and it took a direct hit. And I remember being in bed and getting blown. Now I'm again, maybe 500 meters away, literally blown out of my bed. And we had these trenches outside. And I remember I grabbed my helmet and I was in my underwear. Our weapons were locked up. I didn't know M16. I ran outside in my underwear and my steel pot and dove into this thing. Because once again, I thought, we're under attack. It was just a lucky shot that was close enough that the concussion actually blew me out of bed. I clearly remember that too.
So your weapons were locked up. That doesn't seem very good to be a speed bump, not to have weapons. Doesn't seem very smart.
Yeah, but when you came in, like when we were on ambush, when we came in, we would clean our weapons and put them away in a compound. They were locked up there. Right. You could get them, but they were just locked up. And it was probably a good idea because, well, we had a guy that probably had a nervous breakdown or something. He just went crazy. And he went to the rack where they were locked up, was trying to grab his gun, and he was yelling and screaming. And he really had a nervous breakdown. And he's an MP, but he just lost it. And I mean, they finally came and took him away. He couldn't get it was a good thing he couldn't get his gun because he was going to start shooting, people, us, his own guys he worked with. Kind of scary to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that happens. I can't, yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say about that.
Well, I just think, and I know we were chatting earlier, and one of the things that, you just have things happen, you get exposure to things, and sometimes your mind just can't handle it. And, well, as you well know, I mean, people need to get help, and not everybody can or is willing or is able to admit that they need some help with stuff.
Right, because I can imagine everybody over there felt the same way. It's just some people talked. I imagine no one really talked about it, did they? I mean, was anybody talking about how scared they were?
I don't recall. No, but then we were 18, 19, 20-year-old, all macho. I'm an MP type. I, couldn't possibly ever need any help. I couldn't ever tell anybody that I needed help when probably half the people there did, war is just not something that is normal to people. and the things you see and the things you do is just it's just not normal. It's not like going to the grocery store and buying a gallon of milk and a dozen eggs. It's different.
100%. And it's not like, it's not like it's portrayed in movies and books. Sometimes it's just it's not a good thing.
No, it's not like the movies.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's yeah. One of the things I remember, in the movies, especially the older war movies, you hear this swish in the air, and then an explosion like they're firing rockets at us. Well, what I found out very quickly in Vietnam is when you hear that, it's already long gone. It's the sound's following the rocket. It's not coming like they show in the movie. So if you hear it, it's too late.
Yeah. So you over there for 1 year?
Got a 12-day drop. Back then, toward the end of my term, they were starting the wind down in Vietnam, and they were giving people drops. And it was probably a good thing because as people got real short over there, they got super scared. People that were short were the ones a lot of times that got hurt. And so they would surprisingly give people drops. It'd send them home early. So I got a 12-day drop. So I was there almost a year. But
so back to that with, when you, the interesting thing about the Vietnam War is you had a certain time frame you were there, you were gone, right? And the war kept going on. But what do you think that made the people so susceptible to injury, or that last couple weeks or last month? What do you think was the reason?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they would just get careless. Maybe. I mean, probably not as much as when you're an MP, but when you're out in the jungle, I mean, you got to be worried about everything. And I think maybe if you got almost too cautious, I know that sounds crazy, but if you got too cautious, you might just step on something you shouldn't, or I don't know, but it just seemed. I mean, I didn't have any of that exposure, but I that was something I heard, that when you get short, and I was glad because I was down to like 15 or 18 days to go, and I remember being, I don't really want to go out on, because we would drive MP Jeeps and we'd drive in Da Nang, but there were sometimes at intersections, the locals, our friends, would have these checkpoints set up, and it wasn't unusual that they would crank off a few rounds at a vehicle driving down the street. Well, it might be you. And I remember I had, and again, as we're talking here right now, I had an experience. I was an MP in Da Nang, and I was riding with the Vietnamese MP. I think they called them QVs or something, but they were MPs. And this guy saved my life. We were somewhere, and I don't know why we got out of the Jeep, but we were somewhere. And this Vietnamese soldier, South Vietnamese, one of our allies, was drunk, and he was standing maybe 6 feet away from me, holding a U.S. Army 45, and it's aimed right between my eyes, and he's screaming at me. And are you allowed to use the F-bomb here?
You can say anything you want here. Yeah.
I just remember him yelling, "Fucking GI, fucking GI, I kill you, fucking GI." Yeah, I feel better now. I vented, thanks. And but I remember thinking, is he out of rate? Could I dive over there and do like a superhero thing, swat that gun away? And I'm thinking, he's out of range. I can't. He's like 6 feet away, but he couldn't miss me with a U.S. Army 45 that we had given him. And that Vietnamese, the MP I was working with, just calmly stepped right in between us, stepped right in front of me, and he said, he spoke to him in very calmly. He spoke to him in Vietnamese. I have no idea what he said. The guy just dropped the gun and just walked away, and I'm thinking, shoot him. But I think that guy was drunk enough and not everybody there liked Americans, and I think he was drunk and mad enough he was going to kill me. I'm surprised he didn't. But that guy, I'm sure that MP I was working, that Vietnamese MP, saved my life that day. I can still see that guy as we're sitting here talking. I can hear him yelling, and I can, and that 45 looked like a garbage can aimed at me. When it's that close and it's aimed at you, and there's an angry person holding it, it's frightening. It laughs.
Did you ask the MP with what he said to him, or did you just let it go?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I maybe I said something and he just said, "Oh, he was just drunk." I'm thinking, yeah, he was drunk. I wasn't real. I don't know, but MPs over there, nobody wanted to mess with their MPs. And when he stepped in front of me, I mean, right then I felt pretty secure. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's I know when I was thinking about coming over here, I was afraid that some of these things might come back to me, you know.
Well,
Yep.
like I said, thank you for sharing and being honest. I think this is like we talked before. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to people who are listening, and hopefully it helps you feel good to talk about it, get off your chest something you've been holding on to for a long time. And
yeah, I appreciate that.
you ready for a drink? After that, I mean, I am now. You ready? You ready to go? Are you a whiskey guy at all?
I might have some. A little.
Okay, we're gonna have a couple more. We
right.
do a couple whiskey breaks.
Okay.
We'll do a short one here. I think that's a good spot. I mean, right?
Okay.
Take a break. Tonight we're going to talk about one we've never had before on the show, but tonight we're going to talk about the Few. It's actually Few Spirits, which is in just outside of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. It was founded in 2001 by Paul Huleko. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but the distillery takes its name after a lady named Frances Elizabeth Willard. It's her initials, and she was an historical figure who made Evanston, Illinois, which was the home of like a women's Christian temperance union, made it like one of the most dry counties. They were big into prohibition, so she was one of the first people that proposed prohibition there and made it a dry city from 1855 to 1972. So it's kind of neat that they gave the initials kind of a, screw you to her. But Few produces bourbon whiskey. They do gin, a barrel gin. They do a rye whiskey and an American gin. And all their bottles, they kind of try to look at it as like, give a nod to like the pre-prohibition look, kind of make it a little bit older. But these are actually a little bit different than some of the stuff we've had before. This is actually aged in smaller barrels. They range from 5 gallons to 30 gallons. The barrels are made from a Minnesota oak company. And they have a shorter growth season and tighter grain than most of the other typical bourbon barrels that you see out there. This is the bottle and bonded version, which just came out recently, and they actually brought this out to commemorate their 10-year anniversary, as well as the 125th anniversary of the Bottle and Bond Act. And this is from our friends at Open Grill and Tavern. So it's as a bottle and bond. It's 100 proof. The name of it is actually the Few the Proud, so it has a Marine thing on it, but we're still going to drink out of it. I've been trying to hide that from Joe, but we named it the Few. What a great name to name it. But this mash bill is 70% corn, 20% northern rye, and 10% two-row malted barley. You had it before?
No, I have not.
I can't say I have not, but let's see if we can open this bottle. Holy cow!
You've done this one?
I've lost this. Yeah, we did the barrel pick for this one, so unfortunately there's a lot of whiskey that I have not had. Let me go in there real quick.
Well,
Here you go.
Well, see what happens here. That's got a nice smell.
So do you drink a lot of whiskey or no?
I'm a Crown Royal guy.
Okay. This is a little bit different than Crown Royal. You want to hand that to the scout? He seems like,
Yeah.
You can hand that to the guys that are all trying to try it usually. It's got a lot of kick for 100 proof. I mean, you don't drink a lot of it. Different. What do you think?
Yeah,
This might bring out a lot more stories that you weren't ready for. We got plenty of water over here. We can do it. So
now I could do that with about 2 ice cubes in there.
well, no, the next time we like to make it hardcore, but burn.
It's working.
Yeah, I mean the only thing, the only thing funnier was watching our young gentleman down here earlier tonight eat hot cheese. All the guys were like, "Don't eat that hot cheese," and he just ran up and grabbed it. And you kind of have a very similar look that he had. He's hiding out there like we don't see him, but just think we have another one to do. We have another one. This one's gonna be a little bit lower proof for you next time.
Yes, sir.
It's just sip at your will. So back to your time about being short and all that kind of stuff, I can understand, like, I think it's the same no matter, where you're at. I think if you're, you fast forward to Desert Storm or, Afghanistan or Iraq, when you get like a month out, you just want to go home and kind of, your mind is a little bit occupied in a different space. You know what I mean? You're thinking ahead, not really thinking with what's really going on. I can see that your mind's preoccupied with other things, which is dangerous.
When I came back, I still had, when you're drafted, you had 2 years to do. I need more water. I think you tried to kill me. You still had, when you're drafted, you had 2 years to do.
Right.
And so I had about 7 months I had to do. And I was sent to Fort Rucker, Alabama. And I was an MP, but I just had I don't care attitude, because I only had 7 months to do. And, but I did my MP thing there. It's kind of interesting. It was the helicopter training school. And I remember we used to drive out and to where they had this huge pad. It was probably 10 acres of asphalt. And they would teach these Vietnamese how to fly helicopters, because we're going to give them our helicopters. And you would see them, they would raise up like 10 feet and then try to land softly. And it was comical, since I knew I wasn't going back to Vietnam, watching these people try to land a helicopter. It was kind of like dropping basketballs,
I feel like those poor people that are going to get on that aircraft. They have no idea. Because I can imagine you come back, you're drafted, you're going to do 2 years. Was there any thought, like, when you got back, like, hey, Dave likes us, we're going to make it a career? I had to ask.
Yeah. I think on my paperwork, the company captain said that he gave me a re-up interview or talk. But he must have known my attitude. He didn't do that. They didn't. No, I don't think they ever really forced or encouraged me to stay. And maybe because I was married, and by then I had a young boy, and maybe they just knew me. Maybe my attitude was such that they think, well, maybe we don't really want this guy in the Army. I don't know.
So, like, we're just going to say we talked to Dave about this, and we'll see.
I think that's what they did. They stamped it, said, yeah, talk done.
I've talked to him on Monday.
Nope, he's not doing it.
But so that's this could be a painful topic next. So your 7 months are up. You're back in the States in Rucker for 7 months. Like, what is it like to come? Like, what is it like that time to come home? Because we've had several people on here. You're, like I said, the second Vietnam veteran that came on. I just know from being a son of a Vietnam veteran, and then also like a veteran myself, and knowing the history and following it, it's a lot different than it was today. What was that really like coming back? Because I think a lot, and if it's too difficult to talk about, that's fine. But I really like to talk about it because I think it's something that needs to be talked about, so that it really doesn't repeat itself ever again. I don't know if it ever will, but what was that like?
I remember when we flew back, came to Seattle, and I remember walking in Seattle airport, and I was so nervous, I didn't have my M16 because usually when I was anywhere that wasn't on an army base, somewhere where I was safe, uh, I either had a 45 on my hip like I did when I was at Fort Rucker, or I had an M16 in my hand. And I'm walking through the airport, and people would just scowl at you. I never had anybody spit on me or anything, but there was so much hatred in America back then for. You're pretty good with that.
You gotta go slow, David.
It was just so much hatred, and like I said, I never had anybody throw any like a soda on me or spit. I mean, but you'd see people. You'd be walking through there, and you're in your uniform, and you'd see people walking the other way, and they'd see you, and they'd talk to each other, and then they'd just scowl or something, and it's like, all I did was respond to what my country asked me to do. I could have packed my wife up and gone to Canada. Like an awful lot of people did that, but I did what I was asked to do for my country. And why are you looking at me like that? And I remember it was really bothersome. And of course, back then, this was 71. Now, I've got about a quarter of an inch of hair on my head, and you can tell GIs because of their haircut, and then the people that aren't in the Army, the guys got their hair down to their back and halfway down their back. You could tell those that were and those that weren't. I just felt an awful lot of animosity. And when I got back home to Mansfield after I got out, I just didn't feel right. People that I thought were my friends would kind of look at me and start whispering between themselves, and I'm like, what did I do to you? Why are you treating me like that? So I didn't want to stay in Mansfield because I knew a lot of people in Mansfield because I grew up there, and so my wife and I and my now son moved to Columbus. Oh, that's right. That's how I got here.
So that feeling that you talk about when you that animosity, like, do you look back at it now and understand it and look at it in a different way? Is it easier to look back, or is it still just as painful as it was in 1971? Is it? I mean, because I understand, like, looking at it, that a lot of people were mad about the policy, right, of us being there, and
yeah.
And they were, when that you're upset about something, what do? You take it out on the easiest person, which was the service members that were coming. It just, there was a lot of stuff that was going on that misdirected. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people that read the papers and saw the news thought everybody that went to Vietnam killed babies and violated people and did everything ugly, and all I did was go out and just did my job. Right. What I find interesting is, my wife bought me one of those Vietnam veteran hats, and when I wear that, you get a lot of people say, thank you for your service. And some of them are, at various different ages. But it seems to me most of the ones that are saying that are people from my vintage, my age.
Right.
I'm getting a lot of that, and men and women. And I kind of wonder, are you saying that because you feel so guilty about how you treated us, 50 years ago?
Well, I think it'd be possible for both, right? I mean, there's got to be a genuine, if you look back on both sides of it, like there's definitely a lot of misdirected hate. I mean, if you look at like I love movies. If you look at any Vietnam War movie, there's a lot of there's a lot of everything you just talked about, right? There's a lot of you know, there's a lot of killing. There's a lot of war crime stuff. There's a lot of just crime going on, and drinking, and that's still today. So I don't think I can't think of a Vietnam movie where even if they talk about something, it ends up going back to like you look at Platoon, right? You show what they're doing out there, and then whenever they're back somewhere else, it drives into those same topics. So I think maybe over time it's people realize, like you said, I was just doing my job, and honestly they should feel really guilty about it. If I'm being honest, I mean it wasn't right.
Yeah, you mentioned watching Vietnam movies. I can't watch them.
Yeah.
I could sit there and watch TV and then start crying all of a sudden. And I mean, so if we're going through the channels and we see one of those movies on, we just kind of flip to the next channel because I just can't watch them. But what's kind of funny is that I can watch other movies, but if they're about Vietnam era, I can't do it.
I've heard that before from other veterans, what they can watch. Not their war. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yes.
Somebody else's, which probably places you just don't want to go to. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
So real quick, there's a couple people that want to tell you this that are on there. We haven't pulled up, but you got Matt Huff and Sean. They're both former guests saying, "Welcome home, brother." So on behalf of everyone else, we're at that point of it. Welcome home. Sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
And everybody that now does come and say they're, welcome home and thank you for your service. Just accept it for what it is. I mean, and
and I do, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
because it's interesting. We talked about this like one of the first few podcasts. Is as a service member now, when someone comes and thanks me for my service, it's almost awkward sometimes, right? For us, it is because it was so. It's since Desert Storm. That time frame, like there's not that never happened. Like everybody's like, there's parades when you come home. There's all these things that like, I mean, it could be one dude in a small town in Mansfield and they probably have a parade now. And like, I mean, it's, which is, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just such a reverse that, I've seen from talking to my dad, being old enough to understand things at the time. And now, so it's, I hate to say it, but sometimes I'm like, it's okay. Like you don't have to thank me. You know what I mean?
But you're right. I mean, now when they come home, they're recognized as heroes, and we weren't. We were considered, I guess, bad guys or something. I don't know.
Well, I hope you don't believe that, because you guys you served your country, and I got to tell you that. I don't say this lightly. The people, like, it's an honor to have someone that was like a Vietnam veteran, obviously, but obviously someone that's been drafted that didn't do this on their own. That's, that says a lot about a whole generation that we don't understand. It's about, it's, thank you for what you did. Thank you for your service. Thank you for not going to Canada.
I really like fishing in Canada. I really like fishing.
I mean, what was it like in the 70s? I don't know. But no, I mean, but all the people that are out there, all the Vietnam veterans, thank you guys for your service, and gals. It's you guys are heroes. You are deserving, and you were doing what the country asked, and it was just a weird time. And
when people say it to me, I mean, I appreciate it, and I when they say thank you for your service, I say thank you for mentioning, or thank you for remembering, and I feel good about that. I mean, I like it, I appreciate it, but I'm just thinking, where were you 50 years ago?
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask. Like, how much do you think? Because we like to talk on this podcast about mental health and how we deal with things. How much different would that have made? 50 years ago when you were coming back, that's the reception you got, rather than today. Do you think, I mean, did that put you to a different level of, I mean, have you ever looked back at it like that, or you just kind of it just happened? It happened.
Well, now you're making me think a little bit.
You're a professor. I know you got it in you. You got it.
I uh, I don't know. I probably would have been happier, of course, if there was warm greetings um, or if I felt appreciated in some way,
Yeah.
even though people didn't people people don't understand war because they see what they see on TV and they don't understand what people go through. People, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why so many people, veterans, have maybe have issues because nobody can understand, and the only people that can understand are other veterans. And I think that's maybe why people that are telling me welcome home, these are people that have served, and they understand some of the things that maybe I've said, or maybe they're what I've said has brought up some thoughts about their military experience. Um, I, I think in my case, I mean, I would have appreciated more acceptance when I came back, but under my circumstances, because I was drafted, I mean, it had changed my life, and I was crazy in love with this girl. I mean, I dropped out of college to marry her, and then the Army took me away for a year. So there was some resentment there. Maybe that's why the captain never gave me a re-up talk, because maybe he just knew that I wasn't re-up material. But the thing that's strange, you develop friendships, and anybody who was in the military knows this. I mean, you develop a friendship or a companionship, maybe, if will. I'm trying to think of the right word, with the guys in your unit and other soldiers, people in your unit, and you also develop a friendship for other people that have served, even though you may not have ever met them. Just knowing that you went through some of the things, or you went through something, maybe much more tragic, or maybe not as tragic, but you went through some stuff because you served your country. You're doing this because you serve your country.
Yeah, and I have it. When I look at, just hearing stories from my dad, and then growing up, after that generation, it's just, and like you said before, just acknowledgement of a sacrifice, right? That's what I think for me when I talk to other vets. It doesn't matter what you did, but I can acknowledge your sacrifice, like whether you were the Marine Corps, the Navy, whatever. Like, you sacrifice something to when you're in the military. It's if you would think about it, that's what it comes down to. Some people sacrifice more, some people sacrifice everything, but that's kind of the thing that I feel like whenever I'm around another veteran is like, that they've sacrificed something. And if you get into it, it could be your first love. It could have been missing your first kid. It could have been losing a friend. It could have been losing a limb. There's all these things that it's a sacrifice. And I just say it to everybody who's not in the military, is that's what you really have to acknowledge, is regardless of whether you believe in it or not, you're looking at men and women that honor their sacrifices, acknowledge what they've been through, and that should put you in the right direction, if you ask me. So
yeah, it'd be nice if everybody felt that way.
It should be in anything, though, if you think about it. I mean, not just in the military. I mean, there's all kinds of sacrifices and everything. I think if we just acknowledge what other people are going through and what they've what they're giving up to get where they're at, it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, even though it's not, my experience as an MP, it kind of led me to become a police officer. And policing, some of the same things that I experienced as a police officer, the same way. I mean, the public, some of it likes you, but some of it hates you, and you really see some terrible things. You really see the worst elements of our society, and um, and those have a mental effect on you too. You know, a lasting effect. And but I think more you get more people telling you, you know, thank you for your service as a police officer. But you still get some that, well, maybe they don't say it as much to your face, but you know, there's some animosity, of course, in the public too toward cops. Um, Even though, in my particular case, I served my country 2 years in the Army, and then the city of Columbus 26 years. Um, I sometimes I feel like, you know, what I did is not appreciated. Um, you know, you write somebody a ticket, you know, they don't always feel like, oh, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for looking out for my safety,
Yeah.
officer. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think they always feel that way. Really, what you're trying to do or say is, you know, you were driving 60 when everybody else is driving 35, and what you're doing is dangerous to you or somebody else, and so pay your 100.5 and slow down. You know.
I think a lot of people, once you really, after the moment of you getting a ticket,
Yeah.
the reality of if you're sitting back at home and you don't realize that the cop is just doing their job, you know, let's say 9 out of 10 times, yeah, there's, you know, bad cops out there, let's just say,
Absolutely.
but like really, like you were speeding. Like, I mean, what did you expect them to do? Like, those are the same people that when they're, you know, their managers are in a job that they're wanting to fire somebody for doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. So it's just a different, you know, it's a nobody likes to be pointed out when you're doing something wrong. Nobody likes to be, you know,
You're right.
given a ticket. No one likes to be.
You're right.
I imagine no one likes to be arrested either. That's not a normal person.
Nah,
Like, oh,
I don't think most people like that either.
Thank you for bringing me to justice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
No,
Could you drop me off at the Hilton instead of the jail? You know.
So you come back. You already kind of you jumped ahead. You were like, boom. You're like you're running the show. I love it over here. You're like you're running the show. So you come back, Mansfield, not your thing. Joined the Columbus Police Department, 1971.
71, yeah.
The year before I was born, by the way. Just
That's another age drag. I'll find my buddies.
I'm trying to make my dad feel a little bit.
Let me call a few of my cop buddies.
I mean, look at my dad over there. My dad's over. He's got a whoopee on over there. I don't know what's going on over here. Check him out over there. I wish we had a camera on my dad right now. I don't even know what he's doing over here. I was scared to have 2 Vietnam veterans down here. I was outnumbered until I look up and see my dad right now. I think it's safe. I think I don't know what's going on with it, but no, I mean, what drove you into policing? Was it, you know, you already got a little bit of a touch of policing in the military, or did you?
Well, I didn't really know what I could do, and petroleum engineering was out. But there were parts of policing, especially when I got back to Alabama, to Fort Rucker, and I was a police officer. I mean, I really felt there was something positive about that. Even though you kind of, you know, it's kind of, you know, not everybody likes what police do, but it can be rewarding. And I thought, well, maybe that's an opportunity for me. So, I mean, I don't know if I went into it thinking this is what I'm going to do for a career, but it was, I think at the time it seemed like this is something maybe I ought to try. And of course I stuck with it. So, yeah, I mean, when I first got on the department, we changed shifts every 3 months. We did that for about 1.5 years, and then I went on night shift for 9.5 years. I worked third shift, and that's a different type of policing than what the day guys do. It's, you know, nobody calls you at 3 o'clock in the morning to offer you a cup of coffee and tell you you're doing a wonderful job. If you get a call at 3 in the morning, something bad has happened. But hopefully coming out of that, you can do some good some way, recover some stolen property, or or if not, break up a domestic and send, we did more in my era with somebody has to leave, somebody's got to go. And, reluctantly somebody would grab their keys and leave. And maybe that person that stayed there in the house, maybe they, I'm sure they probably didn't reconcile their relationship, but maybe they were safer that night, and maybe they had some time to think about what they could do to get out of the situation. I at least, and maybe they didn't, but in my mind, I'm trying to think that I did some good, and I did. In fairness, after I did the 12 years on patrol, I got an officer-friendly job and visit schools and neighborhood block watch and that kind of stuff. And I think I really was appreciated. When I was a speaker and there's a room full of people from a neighborhood and there's 40 people there and I come in the room, they do appreciate it that I showed up. And sometimes I'd like to think I shared information that maybe made people's lives safer or their homes safer or reduce their risk of becoming a victim of a crime. So I felt good about that. That was good. But at the same time, I remember when I was on patrol, I mean, there were situations I was involved in, fatalities, dealing with death, and that has some of those images are still very present in my mind, as much so as some of the things I saw in Vietnam.
So even what was it like back the late 70s, early 80s? You have police officers now that don't talk to anybody. I mean, I can imagine back then you had police forces that had handfuls of veterans, right? I mean, you probably weren't the only veteran on the force.
I was surprised, like in my class, there were like 51 cadets in my class. And I think there were maybe 10 veterans. I mean, so it was more, there weren't as many as I would have thought. But I don't know if any of them had an MP experience. I mean, I can't remember, but again, in policing back then, there was a lot of riots down at Ohio State, and again, animosity toward. I remember one particular time. I think the kids had taken High Street, like from 15th, 2 or 3 blocks both ways of 15th. And I was down at 9th and High, and I was just directing traffic. I was closing High Street. You have to turn up this side street. And I mean, there's probably, all along High Street on both sides, there's probably, maybe 1,000 people up near 15th and High, but where I was at, there's probably 50 people on the corners. And they were yelling at me. I mean, I'm waving. All I'm doing is directing traffic. I'm not doing anything but telling, turn here, turn here. And somebody wings a beer can at me, a full one, unopened, Michelob. Thinking,
you see the eye he had? He's like,
yeah, if I just had my ball glove. But I remember it just sailing by my head. And it rolled over against the curb, and I looked at it. I mean, when it hit, I knew it was a full one. It wasn't even open. I'm thinking, if you're going to give me a beer, hand deliver it or something. But I'm thinking, if that hit me in the head, I mean, it very easily could have, put out an eye, or hell, it could have killed me, Michelob, a flying Michelob from the sea. And I'm thinking, what did I do to that person that caused them to show that much hatred and potentially could have seriously injured me? I didn't have a helmet on or any riot gear. I'm just directing traffic. I'm not fighting anybody. I'm not throwing tear gas. I'm just directing traffic. I remember thinking, I wonder if that beer is cold.
And will anybody see me if I pick it up and drink it? No. No,
Yeah.
joking about, putting the jokes aside about the beer. Like what? I mean, what was going through your mind at that time? It had to be a lot of anger, a lot of like. I mean,
Yeah.
what? What stops you from letting that anger take over, or what goes through your mind?
Well, it's probably training. You can't lose your control. And there's when you have riot situations, a lot of probably 90% of the people are just observers, but they're yelling and they're part of the noise and they're part of the crowd, but they're not they're not the ones that are causing the fights and things. And I mean, I remember as I think back, I mean, what could I do? Number one, I didn't know who threw it. There's a crowd of people over there. I could have walked into the crowd and asked them, who threw that. But in the meantime, now, I mean, the cars would have been going up, they would have been going up High Street, and instead of me directing them off. I just think again, it's like in the military. I mean, what you do is you're trained to do, and you do the best you can with the training you had. And I think that's probably the position I was in at that time. You don't want to get so angry you lose control. And I know, and certainly in policing, people do lose their control, and and then the media just blows that up, and so now they think every cop in America is gun crazy or shooting crazy.
So looking back on that, we'll dive in more. Like, kind of the hard question for you. Like, what was the hardest thing, like professionally, physically, personally, while you were on the police force for 26 years? What was the hardest thing for you?
Death.
Your biggest challenge.
Death. If I went somewhere and somebody had been shot or stabbed and there was something I could do, I mean, you did it. If it was nothing but try to stop the bleeding or try to make them comfortable, you did it. But dealing with people that had died, that was the worst thing, because there's nothing you could do to help that person. Even though I had nothing to do with it. I mean, I remember specifically, very clearly in my mind, a hitchhiker up on 71, and it was late at night, and this particular young guy was standing on the side of a ramp, but he wasn't in the street hitchhiking, and he couldn't get a ride, and cars were driving by, and they were over in left lane or something. So he walked out into the middle and got hit. Got hit by we found out later, by a Toyota. The guy never stopped and knocked him down, probably killed him. And then he got hit by a semi. And so, I mean, he was dead. And I got sent up there, and I remember, I mean, it was seeing that and seeing that what was left of him. And some citizen had come by and put a sheet or something over him, but I had to go up and pull that off to make sure, is this person still alive? Do I need to start CPR or something? And I specifically, and I can see it right now, and it's probably been 40 years since I had that. This guy, and I don't really want to be graphic at all, but if you could imagine, from here back was gone, and he was kind of laying on his side, and so you could see the inside from here, but he had no back of his head, he had no brains, he had nothing back there. And I still remember that so clearly, like, why did I raise that sheet up or something? I kind of wished I had. Fortunately, they did catch the guy. The person that hit him lived in Cleveland. They caught him. The truck driver that hit him after he'd been killed. I don't know if they ever found him, but he wouldn't have been charged anyway. But really, really a lasting impression. You know what? Because there's nothing you can do. I don't know. I remember had one day I got sent on a suicide. So when I worked day shift, this was early in my career. So it was day shift. So I got sent on this run for a suicide. And I remember it was a woman, around 50, white woman. And she had an unusual name, and I can't remember what it was, but it had been something like from the 1800s, like Mildred or Matilda or something. It was really an unusual name. And I dealt with, I took care of that run and cleared the run after about 4 hours. And just bang, they sent me on another suicide. And I went there, and it was almost the second woman died a different way, but she was 50s white woman with the same first name. It was really ironic, but you know what a terrible day that was for me. I mean, here's two people and two families that aren't going to understand that, you know, and suicide. Suicide is just such a terrible thing that happens to people and families. And I know you're obviously concerned about that. I used to teach classes at Columbus State, and I was in one of my gigs, and I taught a course that dealt with some of this stuff. I'm not a psychologist or a sociologist, but I had to deal with some of this stuff. And one of the things, yeah, if that was an ice cube, would be talking. One of the things I think that people that have family members that are exposed to or have suicide in this, they blame themselves for not being able to help that person. And then they start reflection and they think, well, you know, I remember last week they said something, the world would be better if I wasn't here. You know, things like that. And so, yes, it's terrible that somebody feels so bad that they can't get help and they take their own life. But then that spins off into family members and friends and acquaintances. It's, you know, it's just a shame that when people need help, that they're either maybe too proud or they don't know how to get help or they don't know where to go. Or they just, or it's a macho thing, you know. Suicide rate is, we were talking beforehand, and I mentioned to Joe about an organization that I read about, Mission 22. And I don't know anything at all about that organization. I don't know if it's, I don't know how legitimate it is or anything. I don't know anything at all about it.
It's pretty legit.
But the 22 is 22 veterans commit suicide every day in America.
Yeah, and if you look at that, that number is really, they say that number is really not 22. It's actually higher, just the way the reporting goes. But yeah, it's which is a sad thing. And it's really, if you look at, if you dig deeper, try to go down that rabbit hole, it's really hard to get an exact number. But they do say that now. Yeah. I think it's, don't quote me, but I think it's more of like 37 or something, maybe.
I would certainly believe that. Yeah, so, easily.
Like Dave said, you know, you don't. There's plenty of places to talk. You got to find that person to talk to. The worst thing you do is be quiet. But if you do, if you are if you are suffering, or you know someone who is suffering or in crisis, and you're considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255, or you can now chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. So, and there's other, if you don't feel comfortable that way, actually today, it's a good segue. Today is actually National PTSD Awareness Day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's another thing to talk about. So those things are, there's definitely organizations out there. All month we've been putting out ways to get help. If you don't know if you have help, there's ways to find out if you have help, and if you do need help, talk to somebody, because like you said before, it's over for that person, it's over for you, but it's not over for everybody else.
Could I ask you a question
Sure.
about that? You just mentioned some place to go and some numbers to call.
Mhm.
And I know my wife and I have this issue if there's a phone number or a email address or something that we would maybe like to reach out to, it's on and it's on TV and then it's gone.
Right.
And so with the information you just put out about that contact information if they didn't have a piece of paper and pencil in the hand and ready to write as fast as you said that, how could they get that information?
It's all on if you look at the screen there, it's all on the bottom right now. And then we also, Josh should put something up again. So it's definitely out there. If you're listening, you can pull it up there, and then later on the show, we'll honor a veteran that also has that information on there as well. So here's a handout to do. So Dave wants to make sure everybody got it. I did say it fast. Right, he's making me do it again. I'll do it again. I'll do it slow this time. I like it.
Thank you
For the generation. We're not. But he's getting his pen out. You can't see him, but one of the new things the past couple of years is 988. That's the best way to do it right now. 988. Press 1. Or you can text 838-255. That's texting. You know what that is, Dave? When you get on there, text. He can't see. You can flip me the bird. Nobody can see right now. And then you can also chat now. veteranscrisisline.net/chat. But the thing is too, is like, again, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I mean, the big thing is just to reach out to somebody. Somebody gives a shit. Somebody cares. You just have to find it. And it's really moving to hear you talk about the families, right? But you still, how many years later you still feel a lot of feelings about what you witnessed with suicide. So it has everlasting impacts on everyone except for the person that
yeah,
leaves,
and
you know what I mean?
And I think one of the things, at least that I know about, and maybe again, it's more in policing because you come home from policing at the end of your shift, but one of the big problems you have is you haven't have somebody who had exposure. Yeah. I mean that guy that got hit, or I've seen suicides by guns and stuff. I mean, they're so messy, and then you come home and here's wifey and 3 kids sitting around the table, and she said, "Honey, how was your day?" And if you tell them, they'll never ask you again how your day went, and you don't want to, and because they don't understand. And so I think, unfortunately, people internalize that.
Yeah, and that's a killer. We know. I mean, that's a killer. That's one of the reasons there. I mean, I'm not a proponent of telling the wife that, but all the people that listen in the warrior class, like, here's the deal. They all feel the same way. Every one of your brothers and sisters feel the same exact fucking way. They pretend like they don't, but they feel the same way. Talk to them, and you'd be surprised how many of them, you can get it out. You can talk to them, and realize that, that you're not alone, that you can, get some of the stuff off your chest about how you're feeling, because that's the biggest thing, right? Is what people don't realize about policing, or they do. I mean, I don't think people really do, but you just said it, right? Something really fucking tragic happens that you're talking about 40 years later, and guess what? You don't get to go home and take a couple days off. You don't, get an hour break. You were literally on another call, and it could be just as tragic as it was before. So it's that's the warrior class. That's the same thing that with the military that people don't understand. That constant every day out, 6 days outside the wire, 3 days back in, then 6 days back, you're back in it. So definitely the warrior class needs to start talking to the warrior class. Needs to put down the facade and be honest about how you're feeling, and I think it would help a lot with how we all feel or have felt.
I go to the VA. I don't know if you've had any if you have any experience with them or you have any thoughts, but I go there and I see a few doctors there, and I know whenever I call the VA, the recording you get when when you call somebody and you get push this. But one of the things that they talk about is if you're thinking about suicide, and they list a phone number. During your initial call, it's not like you have to go there and be recognized by your rheumatologist that you have an issue that you need to deal with, and I have a female rheumatologist I see for my arthritis, and she, if I went there and started talking about some of these things, she would probably recommend that. But when you call there, they have a number, or at least a means of reaching out to somebody right now, instead of pushing 2, push 3.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've never pushed 3, so I don't know, and I don't know what number it is, and I don't know if they are helpful. I don't know how good they'll be, or I don't know. Have you heard anybody that's used the VA? And
not, I mean, we've had some people on that have used the VA, and some people haven't. I think it's really like your personal experience. I don't, the VA is out there. It's always there. I mean, I don't know if I've ever told the story, but when we were standing up Pours with Patriots and trying to figure out, how we could do scholarship money, I had some questions about, if someone had taken, I was basically asking somebody at the VA, like, if someone took their life and they had, the GI Bill, will the kids still get money?
Yeah.
And I was talking to this lady, and the second person, kind of the same question. And finally the lady said, "Hey, before we get going," she's like, "Are you really talking? Like, are you sure that you're okay, that you're not contemplating this? You're not just," and I said, no, absolutely not. And I said, "Thank you for asking that." But they did stop the conversation and be like, "Okay, is this like my friend?" That story, like we have the friend thing. And so, it's for me, I've talked about it before. You probably haven't heard the episode, but I don't go the VA route, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. Right. So there's other organizations that are out there can help. But I think the first thing is that you gotta find it, right? You can't go one route and say, it doesn't work for me and fuck that, I'm not doing it. We can't, because I've done that before, right? We've all done that, but it's not really the way to do it. There's a lot of things you got to find what works for you, and it's out there.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you'd heard, if it was, there's so many organizations out there that are begging for money, and I'm not sure that they're all 100% okay. And that's I know in my case, at least the doctors and the medications I get through the VA work out good for me. But I don't know if I've never had to use any of their psychological help, or I don't know if it's any good or not.
Yeah, the guest a couple weeks ago, Matt, he was on. He talked about he's going through the VA, and it's been life changing with him to be able to find. He found the right VA doctor, but it's like anything. You can go to I have people here that go to OSU to do some kind of surgery, and they think OSU sucks. It just depends on what you have and your experience. I've been really critical about the VA just because of my experience, but a lot of that's a story and bullshit that was from 20 some years ago. But like I said, I found a place that works for me, and I think the basic starts about just telling somebody you have a problem, telling a friend, and that just opens it up. You don't have to just tell somebody, like, just honestly, like, that's because people care. Just if no one heard what you said about those experiences, like how many years ago that you still remember that, it still impact your life, and you didn't know who that woman was. You didn't know who. Had you ever met any of those women before that day?
No.
Okay. It's, and that's the truth, is it's something that always will be with you, but it's just a big thing, especially, we're ending the month that we're supposed to be focused on this, but there's always help out there. And I tell people, hit up anybody on boards with Patriots, hit up our page. One of the guys will get with you. It just talk to somebody about it, you know, and because you're not alone. That's the big thing is, you know, most people that a long time I felt like I was alone. And when that veil or whatever you want to call it's lifted, it makes a huge difference. And a lot of these things, a lot of things make sense, and a lot of pressure.
Taking an awful lot of weight off your back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't really promoting the VA. I just didn't know if you'd heard one way or another if they were really helpful for people who were in needing some help because of PTSD or maybe contemplating suicide. I didn't know if it's
no. I mean, it's work. I mean, it's work for everybody. I mean, I thought you were trying to get my dad. My dad was always trying to get me there. I thought you and my dad were in cahoots.
Well, we are.
This is like, I feel like I'm being teamed up on here.
I wish I had my blanket though.
Maybe I'll share it with you. Probably not though. I know you put him up to this stuff. It's okay. No, but like I said, I've heard it for different people, and it's again, if it works for somebody, that's great. If it didn't work for you, that's great too. We just got to keep finding your. There's a lot of great places. Like you talked about Mission 22, a great organization. There's a lot of great organizations out there that are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're. But I just go back to the basic, because I think you can. There's a lot of power in if we just talk to each other about how we're feeling, right?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I mean, I know that, and I believe that. What I worry about is the people that don't realize how bad they are, or they don't, or the ones that don't know where to go, and it concerns me that if somebody would make that step to pick up a phone and call somebody. There's so many organizations that are out there, and are they really? Is this a good organization that's going to offer them some help, or are they just going to ask for a donation? And and I hate that when you got people that are masking themselves as helpers, and all they really are just people begging for money.
I can share the one you said, Mission 22 is making a huge impact. I can speak on behalf of our organization. We're making an impact. We put our money where our mouth is, and that's important. There's a lot of great places. You just got to find them. And if anybody does ask you for money for your help, that's probably a good idea to hang up the phone and make another call. But just don't give up. I mean, keep trying until you find something.
I mean, I know that, and I know you know that. Obviously, you know about your own organization.
I didn't always know that.
But what about the person who doesn't have that information?
No.
Go to that number you posted on your screen.
Yeah, and Josh also put something up. There's another charitynavigator.org. It's a great resource for evaluating charities and seeing what percentage goes to their mission versus overhead. That's a big thing. But there are some great organizations up there. We'll over the next week here, we'll find some ones that we know that are good and post them on the page for our listeners. But a lot of it is, the other thing about it is sharing a story is what you'd be surprised is how many people have gotten help that aren't even talking about it either. So when you bring it up to them, they can say, hey, by the way, I know this place that helped me. How about you give it a shot? That's the best way. Like opening up, I think, is the key to finding all the information. You know what I mean? Because not everything you believe. You can't believe everything on the internet, right? I mean,
yeah.
Or can you? I don't know.
No, you cannot. No. I like to tell a story. Can I tell another cop story?
You can't. You want to take it? Are you ready for another? I'm ready for another pour. Are you still sipping yours? How about we get the second one in?
I put an ice cube in it. It just melted.
Yeah, well, I need another pour. So we're going to go. We'll knock out that one and we'll tell the next caper story, which I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, you probably can.
No, I love it. I mean, this is great. I know these are maybe we can laugh more about this one. They've been or not. It's just funny.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny.
Okay, good. Okay. So this one we've had on before. We've had Elijah Craig with us. This is a new barrel pick from Opal Grill and Tavern. I picked it because of your age. It's oldie but goodie, you know. Another shot for me to go on age. Not really, but I just thought that'd be a good one to do. But Heaven Hill, this is from Heaven Hill. We talked about them a lot out of Bardstown, Kentucky.
Your knife in my back.
I'll give you the one out of my pocket. It's a private American owned distillery that's been operating since 1935. If you haven't heard of Heaven Hill, you're missing out, or you're not really into whiskey. I've said that before, but it's actually the 7th largest alcohol supplier in the United States. It has the 2nd largest bourbon whiskey inventory in the world, which means it's in the United States too. But it says that bourbon. It's the largest independently family owned and operated producer of distillate here in the United States. Its headquarters in Kentucky. I'm sorry. It produces Heaven Hill, Evan Williams, Elijah Craig, Old Fitzgerald, Larceny, Henry McKenna. These Elijah Craig small batch single barrels, they originally started in 2016. That's when they released that, and then in 2021 they started doing the barrel proof. So this is 94 proof. You won't have to add as much water if you go for a second round. So I'm going to hit another one here.
I'll try it. I've got my melted ice here.
Right, nice. We'll do it. Yeah, what the heck. And this one is 10 years old. The one before was not age stated. This one, the mash bill is a little bit higher corn, 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. These are always yummy.
See, it says Ice Mountain.
I was loving the hand comes on the camera to get the bottles to try. So well, this didn't take your breath away this time. I'm good.
Well, no, I put a melted ice cube in there. Yeah, it has a different taste. It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you like better, first or second?
I think this one.
What do you like about this one more?
I just think it's smoother to me. The first one had a little bit of a bite to me, but then I'm not much of a whiskey drinker.
Not agree that it's 100 proof. This one's 94, but you'd think it wasn't a lot, but it is enough. But that other one did have a little bit more kick to it, I think. A little bit more rye. So maybe that's like that rye note. Maybe it had a little bit more.
I think you could taste that.
Yeah. So.
Huh.
All right, so it's time for a funny cop story.
Well, I was working one day and stopped at a traffic light. I won't drag this out too far. Stopped at a traffic light. There was a car in front of me, and I was at the at an intersection where there's a ramp coming off the freeway, and we were stopped on the road, and the light turned green for us, and the car in front of me went through. So I mean, it wasn't just now. The car went through the intersection, and I started to go through. In the corner of my eye, I saw this white van coming down the ramp, and the guy was coming pretty fast, and I hit the brakes, and he just came right in front of me, and since he was doing that to a cop car, he just pulled right over on the side. He knew he was had. I mean, because that light wasn't yellow, it was red for a while, and so I pulled him over and I wrote him a ticket, red light. And the reason he did that, he was a wine salesman, and he had wine in there. And he said he was coming down the ramp too fast. He didn't want to slam on the brakes for the red light because he didn't want his wine to shift and maybe break bottles or something. And
you gotta let him go for that. Holy cow, that seems like a good. Put it in bourbon. Next
he
time.
did not have an offer for me, so, but it actually bothered me to think that he was protecting his wine, and he could have T-boned my car, but anyway, so I lived in an apartment complex then, and while I had noticed his address was close to mine, well, he lived in the same apartment complex I did, fairly close to me. So whenever I would see that white truck there, I'm driving home, I'd kind of duck down because I didn't really want to have eggs, all that stuff. But anyway,
I thought you were gonna say you were driving by with your arm out, like getting your weekly.
well, I did write
weekly
him a
Chardonnay
ticket. He probably wasn't real happy about that. But no, this is the part you'll love. About maybe 3 years later, I'm in a coffee shop, donut shop, Cops Donuts. And I'm sitting there just drinking my coffee, and there's a couple of girls maybe 20 feet away. And there's probably a term for this. She was talking to me, but she was talking to them. And she was saying, you know how cops are. They got to get their quotas in, And she's throwing those words in my direction. And I'm sitting there with about 80 pounds of torque in my cup, just trying to maintain that cool. Don't do anything crazy. So anyway, I finally said something to her. Did something happen to you? And she said, yeah, my boyfriend got a ticket from one of them cops for running a yellow light. And I said, well, okay. Well, how'd that happen? Well, he drives a wine truck. He delivers wine. And he was getting off the freeway, and he went through a yellow light, and this cop wrote him a ticket for red light. And I'm thinking, did you ever live on Loring Road? Well, yeah, we lived there. Thinking, well, I think I know this story. And here's what happened. He didn't slow down coming down the ramp. He risked having an accident, wrecking his wine or wrecking me. But from the time he got that ticket to the time he went home, he changed the color of that light because he didn't want to go home to his girlfriend and say, hey, I did something stupid today, and the cop wrote me a ticket. So he just changed the color of the light, which made me the bad guy instead of him. So I know, how often do people hear stories that maybe were tweaked for the benefit of the speaker or the listener? I still remember that obviously it's not anything it's not stressful for me, except driving past his house waiting for a rock to come through my windshield or something.
That's got how many years later was that? It was
that was early in my career. Well, yeah, that was probably early 70s sometime. Yeah.
So we talked about the bad things, about the worst things being a cop. What's your favorite thing that you remember being a cop for 26 years of things?
Well, I think
besides
like
giving people running yellow light tickets.
Yeah, I was bad about that. I hated writing tickets. For one thing, I drive like an idiot myself, and it seemed hypocritical for me to write people tickets to what I did, and I was always getting in trouble because I didn't write enough tickets. The police department didn't have quotas, but they wanted you to write some, and so I wasn't real good about that. But I think, I know one time I found a lost 4-year-old, and I felt really good about that. I mean, Mom, when we got the little girl back, she wasn't very far away, but she was lost, to the mother anyway. And she just wouldn't let go of that baby, and that 4-year-old. And I don't know if she ever thanked me or not, but I know she was grateful that I found her child. Sometimes you do things that you don't get recognized for. In the military, you do things that, you don't get recognized for. And I feel good about that. I mean, I got a lot of, when I was officer friendly, I got a lot of thank yous, letters and notes and things. From different people, and I appreciated all those. But I think sometimes when you do something like find a lost child, to me, that's very rewarding. I felt good about that.
So the officer friendly, is there anything like that Columbus does now? Like, what would be a equivalent like 20 some years later?
I forget what
like that. Is like public reach? Is that what you're going to schools and?
Yeah, I don't know what they have a unit. I don't know what they call them, but they have a unit that still does stuff like that. I mean, there's a need for that. You know what's interesting? When you go to elementary schools, they like you. When you go to high schools, they not so much love there. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of it is the school and the district you're in. And you get some different attitude about that.
Yeah, and also like hate and fear and all this animosity. It's a learned thing, right? Like, so I mean, it's not hard to see as you get older that you start to, like you said earlier, like what's the story, the real story, or the real things that happen, right? I mean, people
Yeah.
have been affected by it, and I mean, think about it. It doesn't matter if you go to an elementary school, if you're a cop, like a welder, um, a janitor, police. I mean, they all love you. Like they just like. I mean, think about that. Like nobody, no kid. I remember, young hearing these stories of like you going to Parents' Day, and someone telling what they did and getting booed off of, get out of like, oh, we don't want to hear from no welder. You know what I mean? We don't want to hear from the gas guy making 25K. The question I have to ask: so, if they were paying you a degree to go to the Middle East for 25K, what was the Columbus Police Department paying in 1971? Do you remember?
Oh crap! Probably. Uh, I don't know. I know at when you work special duty, when you see them working places, that's not usually time and a half. It's like maybe time plus 40% of what your base pay is. It's a set rate, but it's usually more than your normal hourly rate. And I remember I was working at one time, and I was getting $6 an hour, and I was thinking, man, this is great. Every minute I get an extra dime. And I'm, direct traffic. I'm sweating like crazy. I'm thinking, but every minute
I'm gonna be rich.
So I don't know. Probably at that time they were probably paying $4.50 an hour, something like that.
So crazy. So crazy. Can't imagine. So you do just 26 years. You couldn't get the 30 in. You didn't want to go 30.
No, I didn't want to.
No,
I
you couldn't make it to 2000. No.
The way the retirement system's set up, you got to be 48 and have 25 years of service in. And I had, I went through a whole police career and I did nothing wrong. I mean, probably the worst thing I ever did is maybe get somebody to offer me a drink at Christmas time on a run somewhere, and I might have done that, a shot or two. But I never took my cooler to work, and I never did anything.
Legal, they didn't hear that. He didn't do that. He allegedly took those shots. No, I'm kidding.
But toward the end of my career, I'm trying to be careful here so I don't end up getting sued. A lady sent Carol Looper a letter saying that I was a sergeant then, and I was running a program, and they accused me in this letter of playing golf on duty and allowing there's 3 accusations: allowing one of my employees to use one of our vehicles for his personal use, and something else, I can't remember what it was, and playing golf on company time. And she sent Carol Looper on channel whatever. She forwarded that letter to a deputy chief who forwarded it to IA and Internal Affairs. And they started an investigation. I didn't know anything at all about this. And this investigation, well, they followed me. They called everybody. Eventually, they called everybody in that worked there, timesheets, records, all that stuff. And after about 3 months, then I became aware of it. And I was called into Internal Affairs. And because there was an accusation of playing golf while being paid, technically I'm stealing from the city because I'm being paid by the city, I'm playing golf. They advised me of my constitutional rights. And I think at that very moment, when I'm in here thinking I've just done 26 years and I've never done anything except try to help people. Maybe sneak a shot or two at Christmas time.
He's like, I did do that. Gotcha.
I confess, statute of limitations is gone on that.
He's like, hey, I motherfucker, I did that. No.
But being read the constitutional rights when I thought, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And they ended up doing like a 6-month investigation. The report was about that thick, and they found out there was nothing to it. I'm thinking, you wasted 6 sergeants in 6 months. All you had to do was ask me. But I felt so bad about, you've got to be kidding me. I've given the constitutional rights to people for 26 years. Now you're giving them to me. And I just felt so betrayed by the city and by the police department. And so when I turned 48, I gave them 10 days till the end of that next pay period, and I was gone. I felt bitter about that. Yeah, when you're accused of a crime, I didn't do it. Took an awful lot of time, awful lot of wasted money. But how many people does that happen to, Certainly that guy driving that wine truck, he ran that red light.
Allegedly. His wife
light.
said it was a yellow light. Well, now you would know. You'd have dash cams that would you'd be able to be like, dude, let me show you something real quick. Or body cams or whatever. So that'd been bad for your shot thing though. Like at Christmas, the body cam. Unless you were
Christmas.
Unless you were like,
oh yeah, you'd have to. Yeah, I don't know how I'd do with that body cam.
I fell down and tripped. I'm sorry about that. No, but
I'm reading this book.
Yeah. Oh man, so you decided to bounce from that after that.
Yeah.
And then
I was teaching part-time at Columbus State. And I'd been doing that, and I kind of did it just for fun. I enjoyed teaching classes, cop stuff, classes. And when I could retire from the police department, they had an opening in the faculty, a very small faculty department. They had like 4 faculty members, but they had probably 30 adjuncts or part-time people, adjunct teachers, they call them. And I'd been an adjunct. But I was able to, I'd always gotten good reviews. I don't want to say I was good. I think I was, but that sounds a little arrogant. But I always got good reviews, got good things. And so when I applied to get this position, on the faculty, and I got that job. So then I was on the faculty. What struck me funny was, to get on the faculty, I had to do a drug test. And I'm thinking, I've been teaching here for 15 years. You didn't care if I used weed before, but now you want to know. So, but I went and peed in the bottle and I was okay. But, so I was on the faculty at Columbus State, and I did that until I was able to retire or get Social Security or Medicare. Insurance was my biggest thing, medical insurance is a crisis in this country. But I enjoyed teaching. I did. I liked, I taught cop stuff. I did some CSI type classes. You get these people, they would come in there and they think they could take one class and become one of those techs that they see on TV, on CSI and those things. I could take a class. I could do that.
Solve a crime in 23 minutes, or how long is an episode?
During a commercial.
Yeah, I think it's about 18 minutes or 21 minutes an episode.
Yeah, they can lift a print, break away, sell a Chevy, sell you a pizza and a 6-pack of beer, and come back and they know who did it. Put it into the computer
that runs faster than the one we're running right now, and boom, you found you solved the caper. But so you've had a few jobs in your day.
Yeah, I did. I guess the ones that really counted, before I went to college, I'd done a few things. I'd sold shoes. I worked at a vending company. I worked in a gas station. There used to be, people used to go to gas stations and you had to people that would pump your gas for you.
That's still New Jersey.
And they would clean your windshield, check your oil, and all that crap.
Have you been in New Jersey? They still do that in New Jersey. If you go to New Jersey, don't get out of your car and try to pump your gas. It's gonna be bad for you.
Perfect.
They don't like it.
I'm on a road trip. I'm leaving in the morning.
It's kind of awkward. It's kind of awkward now, though. I mean, it's like I can pump my own gas. So you had all these jobs. What was the best job you ever had? And why?
Probably when I was doing that officer friendly stuff, because I was so, it was funny. When we met today, I shook your hand and we gave a hug. But when you meet people, it's natural in America, I think, to shake somebody's hand. But when I was working when I got my officer friendly job, I just come off 9.5 years on third shift. And people would meet you because you responded to a phone call, people would meet you at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes they're drunk and sometimes they're high and sometimes they want to shake your hand. Well, I'm right-handed and my weapon is over on my right side. And I didn't want to shake somebody's hand and have them grip my hand and then come across with their left and move my nose over or pull out a weapon and shoot me. So I just lied to them, tell them, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to shake hands, which was an out-and-out lie. But I just didn't. I said, we're just not allowed to shake hands, which is just absurd. But then when I got to be officer friendly, and I would show up at like a neighborhood meeting and I'd bring in my brochures and whatever display work I had. And here was somebody and they'd come up and they want to shake my hand. And I remember feeling, it's okay, Dave, you can shake their hand. They're not going to punch you in the face, or you don't have to reach for your weapon because this is a neighborhood community that wants to start a block watch or something like that. It was a difficult transition for me for a while from working third shift on patrol to, third graders don't really want to attack you too much,
It's when they get to fourth. That's when it gets bad. No.
Somewhere between the fourth and the fifth, they just tank,
It's when they get out of that elementary school, I tell you. Worst job you ever had?
Probably, again, well, greetings, your friends and neighbors.
Do you consider that your worst job?
I hated the idea of what happened. I still have very fond memories of the people I worked with. I had two good friends, and because I knew I was coming here to see you, and I was thinking about that. And I have a guy named Virgil, and I can't remember Virgil's last name. And he was a cowboy. He was from Lubbock, Texas, and maybe I should talk to Dad. But they used to be on TV, Marlboro, and all cigarettes used to have commercials on TV.
Oh man.
And Marlboro commercials usually involved a cowboy riding a horse. They're always really a macho type guy smoking cigarettes. Well, Virgil had made a commercial he was a true cowboy. He had actually been involved in making a Marlboro commercial. And the other guy I had a real good love for was a guy named George, and he was from West Virginia. And I might even, I know I sent you some pictures. I might have sent you pictures with some of those guys. I would have done anything for those guys, and they would have done anything for me. So when you ask me what was the worst job, giving up the safety and the comfort of living at home and going in the Army had to rank right up there. But my experiences within the Army and the people that I interacted with, I had great I had great sergeants, and I had a couple that, I'm not sure what side of the fence they were on, but I mean, when I say that, I mean, I don't know if they were really all American. Were they really? Did they care about me, or were they just in there for their own personal? Good and bad supervisors, but you have that in any job. So I guess it's kind of difficult for me to answer that question. I didn't like being taken away from the safety and comfort of home, but at the same time, I developed friendships and did things in the Army that you feel really good about. You know, does that make sense?
I think it does. I think you've talked to anybody that's in the military. If you really ask them, it's the fucking best job you ever had, the worst job you ever had. And I know you didn't watch war movies. It would me ask that question. I haven't asked it before, but I just watched Fury again for like the 900th time. And there's that part when they're in like the worst time ever and things are going really bad. And that's what they'd say when they were all together. Like, this is the best job I ever had. And, you know, they, at the time, it was the best job I ever had, but it was also the worst job I ever had. So I think all of us would go back to a part of it every time if we could.
Yeah.
We'd change a little bit, or maybe not. I mean, who knows? But it was definitely, to me, that answer is pretty. The best job I ever had was serve my country, and the worst job I ever was serve my country as well. So it's like
it's kind of a mixed bag there on responding to that, but I think that would probably be my answer.
Yeah. So we're almost ending the podcast, getting to the end of it.
I don't want it
to end. You want to keep going? That's all right. I mean, hey, we can do whatever we want. I mean, this is what's great about it. Josh is falling asleep back there, though. I haven't seen him pop his head around. What's he doing back there?
He's looking for a blanket, I think.
He's out there. But the one question I did, I mean, you've kind of touched on a little bit as we went through. You know, you struggle with PTS from just talking here. I can see and struggle with depression. What got you through it all these years? You know, you're approaching 75 next week. What made you decide to keep pushing on and fight for your life?
I never went and sought help, but that wonderful woman that I was so much in love with that I dropped out of college to marry, we divorced like 15 years later. And I was single for probably about 15 years. Then I met my current wife, and she's been strong for me. I mean, I don't necessarily share everything I haven't shared everything with her that we've talked about today, but maybe I have now. But she's been a rock for me. And I know that, I mean, I think I can function safely, but should I, or would I be healthier if I went and talked to somebody? Probably. I mean, I don't know who has had traumatic things, if people that have had exposure to traumatic things, if they're coping with it, that's okay. But would they be better if they went and did like a group session or shared some of those things with other people? That's probably where I fit in, I think.
We can talk more when we get off camera. I got a place for you that can help. But no, I think you don't have to. I mean, the big thing that we talked about is you don't have to, you don't have to suffer. I'm glad that you've been able to find a rock and to get that through, and like your outlook on it is so refreshing, and your honesty has been awesome. So one final question about that. You know, with the focus of how much attention's on mental health right now, the veterans and police departments, what do you think is not being done that needs to be done for police officers, military to help with this problem?
Oh, golly. You know, the thing with military and policing You know, it's a job that is it's built into the criterion of the job to be a macho person. And whether you're a man or a woman, you got to be tough. And part of that toughness is not showing that you're weak. And so there's a mentality, I think, uh, with anybody who has any sort of job like that, to pretend like they don't need help or to internalize it, like we mentioned earlier. And so somehow or other, it would be so good to tell, to somehow to reach out to people that may or may not know that they need help and tell them that it's okay. You're not going to lose your job if you do this, or you're not going to be seen as you're still a hero. You're still a good person. Uh, and I don't know how we cross that bridge to tell people that are in need but don't want to admit that they're in need. Uh, I think that would be how do we reach out to those people? I know you're trying to do it right here, and
Yeah, I think you're doing it right now. You actually are. You're telling your story. This is you did it. You did it for the past 2 hours. That this is exactly what the vision of why we started. This was exactly what it takes. Is it takes people to talk about it, to be open, to be honest, to share their story, for someone to be like, oh shit, I feel the same way. I'm not alone, or you know,
yeah,
hopefully, it's that's it. You're doing. I think you're right. But the letting the armor off is a good way to say it. Taking the armor off, like
yeah.
we don't need it all the time. You don't. It's okay to be not okay. I think it takes us as a warrior class to talk about it, to say it to each other, because we don't do that. We pretend like everything's okay, and meanwhile it's crumbling behind us.
And I think that people that are in not comfortable with themselves, and I'm certainly, as I'm going to have a drink, people sometimes escape their problems by turning to drugs, or by or not doing good things for themselves, eating, or and just go do some exercise is maybe good for you. I'm not suggesting we give up drinking, because
I mean, in some cases you should, though.
In some
if it's
cases,
a problem for you, absolutely should not be drinking. For those
right now, I'm enjoying this.
You're okay though. You're fine. I think it's good. Let's pretend it's Christmas time. You're on a call. That's good. So, but
it's a birthday drink.
That's right. Next week it's the big 7-5.
Quit
That's
saying
awesome.
that.
Oh, I got it. That's a big milestone. That's a good thing, though.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
That's a milestone. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's
yeah.
a big
You want to trade?
I'll be there. Like, I used to think I'd never. No, because it'll be here before I know it. Hopefully. But on behalf of myself and Pours with Patriots, I'd like to thank you for coming in. This has been a heck of an episode.
Thank you.
It's been really awesome for me. Not that the other ones weren't, but like I said before, it's been really special to have another Vietnam veteran in that's not my dad. I don't mean that in a bad way, because growing up, you guys were heroes to me. And one of the main reasons why I joined the military. So it's really amazing to see you guys that made it through and living a happy life and doing pretty well and hitting 75. But you guys are my heroes, regardless of what happened. Well, welcome home. I got a few more minutes. I could say 75, but again, I want to thank you for coming on and having the courage and honesty to tell your story. It means a lot, and I hope it connected with someone, and I hope you enjoyed your time with us.
It did. It's been wonderful, really, and I appreciate those people that made comments. You can always tell a Vietnam veteran, when they're talking to another one, that it's very common for them to say "welcome home," and it's because they weren't welcomed home before.
All right. Well, welcome home. You're always welcome here.
Thank you.
I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So we're going to transition to the not so great part of the night. Tonight, we're going to honor a fellow veteran who unfortunately took their life. Tonight, we're going to honor U.S. Army Sergeant Daniel Alexander Summers, 30 years old. Daniel took his life on June 10th, 2013 in Phoenix, Arizona. Daniel was born January 14th, 1983. Daniel enlisted in the California Army National Guard in 2003. He completed advanced individual training at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and was assigned to Charlie Company 250th Military Intelligence Battalion in Long Beach, California. In 2004, Daniel deployed to Baghdad, Iraq, as part of a tactical human intelligence team. While deployed to Iraq, Daniel performed over 400 combat missions in support of Task Force Lightning. After completing language school in 2016, Daniel deployed to support the Special Operations Command as a senior intelligence analyst. After returning home from his second deployment, Daniel was diagnosed with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and other medical issues. In 2007, Daniel founded a band in Phoenix called Lisa Savage. The band performed at various live events in the Southwest, frequently donating its proceedings to benefit people wounded in the Middle East. Daniel is survived by his father, Howard, mother Jean, wife Angeline, and numerous other relatives and friends. As we already discussed, if you or someone you know is in crisis or might be considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255 or chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. And unfortunately, Daniel was one of the people that left the note, and I wasn't going to read this, but I'm going to, considering what today is. Today is PTSD Awareness Day. So this is Daniel, you can look at online and see his whole suicide note, which is pretty long and has prompted a lot of change in some aspects with the military. But this is a part that I thought was really fitting to read. This is his last words before he took his life. He said, "I'm sorry that it's come to this. The fact is, for a long time, for as long as I can remember, my motivation for getting up every day has been so that you would not have to bury me. As things have continued to get worse, it has become clear that this alone is not a sufficient reason to carry on. The fact is, I am not getting better. I am not going to get better, and I will most certainly deteriorate further as time goes on. From a logical standpoint, it is better to simply end things and let any repercussions from that play out in the short term than to drag things out into the long term. Thus, I am left with basically nothing, too trapped in a war to be at peace, too damaged to be at war, abandoned by those who take the easy route, and a liability to those who stick it out, and thus deserve better. So you see, not only am I better off dead, but the world is better without me in it." And that is absolutely wasn't the case then, Daniel, and it's not the case now. And I thought that was a fitting way to honor all the 56 people that we've honored here, and it's a strong message. And what you've talked about all day is that you do matter. Just reach out. It breaks my heart to read that, and I'm just lost of words. But if you're feeling that way again, there's someone that cares. His family cared, and I just wish he had reached out to somebody before he did that. So sorry about that, but we'll end it with a quote here. Episode 56. So you can go celebrate a little bit off camera your 75th birthday. That's the last time I get in there. So this is a quote from Eric Schneiderman. "Every day in every city and town across the country, police officers are performing vital services that help make their communities safer." So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to your country and your service to the community of Columbus for 26 years. And again, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Have a great night. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks. Oh, sorry. He did. There's one thing I forgot. Josh is on me. I love it. We do have one more announcement to go over. Our partners are having a fundraiser. You've seen me post this before. It's time again for the big Spike the Stigma Mend the Mind volleyball tournament coming up here July 13th. We will be there with some goodies to raffle off like we did last year. Again, it's $150 per team. That's per sixes. So that's, my math is not great. That's $25 a person. Get out there. I'm not going to read this, but they're a partner of ours. We've talked about them for a long time here. They created this volleyball tournament in honor of one of their friends and teammates who took his life. Great cause. These ladies are kicking ass, and they're making an impact with the money. You talked about places that are making an impact, Dave. These ladies are doing it. So if you want to play volleyball, come on out there. There's some ringers, so be careful. But I think we're supposed to have a team this year, but everybody bailed on me. We're going to have to next year, ladies. We'll do a team next year. But again, thank you. And we'll see everybody in a couple weeks.